Hi guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning into the Sovereign Path. So today I am answering the question that I've been asked by a ton of you, and that is, what does it feel like to be in physical union with the twin? So I did a video kind of similar to this a couple months ago, was around what physical union is like when you're in inner union. And so you guys can check that video out as well if you'd like. This one is more specific on what it's like to be in just physical union, obviously inner union, because if you're not in inner union, you're not going to be in a harmonious physical union with the twin. So that's pretty much a given. If you hear any noise in the background, that is my twin ripping the kitchen apart. So sorry if it gets loud, if you hear any drills or hammering or anything like that. So this is potentially going to be kind of a short video. What does it feel like to be in physical union with the twin? It feels like, I've said this in a lot of videos, and so let me sort of back up and just kind of move from, I guess, so I can give you guys maybe some back and forth a little bit. So in the beginning stages of this path, when you're going through the throes of all the stuff and all of that kind of thing, and you're kind of going back and back, you're being like super triggered, potentially, there are arguments coming up and all of that sort of stuff. That's gone, right? That goes away. So when you're in inner union and you're in physical union with the twin, you're in neutrality at that point. So there's none of that arguing that comes up anymore. And this is because you're not moving from that dualistic state anymore. You've neutralized, the polarization. And so the interaction feels very peaceful. It feels calm. It feels comfortable. It definitely feels familial in a lot of ways, because this, it's kind of like you're hanging out with you, and there's a very sort of loving, peaceful, resonance and energy that comes from that. That's hard to put in words if you haven't experienced that. And so, the arguing stops, and it's not really a matter, because the masculine, as I said in the last video, the masculine does move from the mind still much more than the feminine does. And so it's not a matter of saying that potentially things don't come up, as far as there may be a little bit of a trigger here or a little bit of a trigger there. People still have their moods and things like that. But it's almost like an echo, or it's kind of like something that you can't really touch anymore. It seems kind of blurry, the trigger. So what I mean by that is that none of that stuff sticks. So even if you feel kind of like a past energy or something potentially that would have bothered you before you came into inner union, even if something like that were to come up, say your mom brought something up when you're all hanging out in family, and you notice that was a trigger for you, or you notice that was a trigger for you and the twin, or however that plays out, and you remember that, but you can't actually touch it anymore. It's like an odd sort of an echo, or an odd sort of like a past dream state that you remember having, but you can't go back to. And so in that way, it's not that things don't still come up, it's just that they don't stick. They don't have the sticking power that they had before you came into inner union. Once you come into inner union, it's just like a very free flow state. It's a very loving state. It's just this sort of buoyant, neutral, loving, I'm good with you, you're good with me kind of energy that you are in with the twin. And as I said, even though they're moving from the mind space, for the most part, because they're the material twin, it's still like this, because it's you. So it's the yin and yang principle. So it's both aspects that are coming together and merging into one. And so it's just kind of like this free flow state. My masculine has described it as just being calm, just being chill, just getting along, just kind of hanging out with, your best friend in a lot of ways. And that is what it's like in a lot of ways. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So yeah, the triggers, they're just not around anymore. It's just a free flow state of just calm, chill, peaceful, loving energy. It's just it's starkly different. I feel like I'm just rambling. It's starkly different from what it was when you were in the throes of the dark night, or when you were sort of in and out of separation. It's nothing like that. It's almost like it's odd, because you kind of look back and you're like, I remember what it was like when we were kind of going back and forth all the time. And there are parts, I think, that the ego programming will sort of feel like, oh, that was the highs and lows. It's almost like the ego programming will sort of miss in the beginning stages of coming into physical union with the twin, when you're in inner union, kind of that highs and lows and that ups and downs of things, because our nervous system has become so accustomed to that, right? Accustomed to the go, 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 or the chaos, or they always have to be doing something, or love means that we're on and off all the time, and that makes it exciting because you're always in polarity, and so that means we're always in opposites, and so that means we have the pull and the draw and all that kind of stuff. Really, it's just your nervous system being dysregulated all the time, and we just get accustomed to that feeling and thinking that that's what romantic interaction does, and that's normal, and that's how it plays out. And so there are those aspects of coming into physical union, I would say, in the beginning stages of sort of wondering where that went. The ego program will be sort of like, where did that go? We kind of don't have that highs and lows, and the ego kind of will want that on some level. But that too is very short-lived, because the feeling of just finally being like at peace and being in this free flow state with your twin, where you're not triggering each other anymore, and you're not like worrying if they're going to leave, and you're not worrying like when the next separation is going to come. You're not worrying about, oh, well, I need to be like really paying attention to like staying neutral, or I really need to like pay attention to this trigger that just came up so I can like, deal with that. And so let me excuse me from this, or, oh, when are you going to like text me back, or I haven't heard from you in however long. All of that like anxious, anxiety-ridden, fear-based energy stuff, gone. It's gone. None of that hangs around. None of that hangs around. And I've said that in a lot of videos. Like unity consciousness, it doesn't have fear-based energy in it, right? This is why you're shedding all of that stuff during this process, right? And like while you're feeling like, God, am I ever going to get to inner union? Like how it's over there somewhere. Am I ever going to get there? Right? Because you feel like I'm just like, I keep like peeling off all these layers. How many possible layers could there be? The reason that you keep doing that is because you can't take any of it with you into inner union, right? Like I said before, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And so when you get into these, inner union states, and then you're having, physical interaction with the twin, it's just a completely different, it's just a completely different frequency now that you're living in, that you're embodying, and all that sort of stuff. And so I've heard a few people ask me to touch on this, like, do you have to still stay really mindful of, the ego, and really paying attention to what's coming up when you're in physical union with the twin, even though you're in inner union? And I would say in the beginning, yes. In the beginning, you do have to still stay mindful of, having that awareness, because in the beginning, when the twin is coming back into your world physically and that's starting to anchor, you still have to maintain your anchor, if that makes sense. And so having the awareness of, not allowing yourself to sort of slip back into the old story of like, oh, now they're here, and so that means I've done all the work, and so blah, 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 and all of that kind of stuff, and potentially, you know, sort of slipping out of the anchor and having the awareness that inner union and your self-love and your sovereignty is what is drawn them back in and what will keep them in your world in a harmonious, you know, way. But if you slip out of that because you start running the story again, or you notice that a trigger comes up and that spins you backwards, then yeah, that can be like a little bit of a sort of a navigational awareness to have as you're coming into physical union, lasting physical union with them. But the longer that you are in that physical union with them, the easier it becomes. Because the more and more your inner union anchors, the more and more, like I said, it's just, stuff doesn't stick to you in the same way. It just doesn't. You'll notice things will come up, you know, old energies, or if you're around your family, or, you know, if you're around, you know, your job situation, whatever, you'll notice other energies coming up and around. You may notice other energies for the twin as well that may like remind you of the past, or, you know, some sort of trigger that you used to have or whatever. But they just don't have any staying power anymore. It's just that you're not operating in that frequency anymore. And so as long as you maintain your inner union, the physical union with the twin is going to be smooth, because that's what it's based on. And because you're not running separation programs anymore. And if you're not running separation programs anymore, they're simply not going to be a part of your physical reality with the twin, right? This is why I'm always talking about how important inner union is and the focus of self-love for the feminine on this path, and why I'm not talking a whole lot about the masculine in a lot of videos and, you know, all of these sort of things. Because in order to truly move through this path, this is a self-love path. This is you and you path. And this path, if you stay on it and you stay in your lane, focusing on your love, it is going to literally set you free. I've said this in so many videos, like, this is the freedom key. This path is literally the freedom key to your best life, because you're not going to be running that fear anymore. And the peace that comes from that, like the buoyancy that comes from that, the higher timeline that comes from that, the abundance that comes from that, just feeling just good. And good, I don't like good because good sounds like an emotion. It's just like, it just feels like freedom. It just feels like you're just good, right? You're just really in a good space. And that is the space ultimately that you share with the physical masculine. So the other thing that I wanted to address that a few of you asked was, and I get this one all the time actually as well, do you fall out of attraction with the twin, right? This is a huge one. Do you fall out of attraction with the twin because now you're in neutrality, right? Now you've collapsed duality, you've neutralized polarization, you recognize that this is you and you, right? You full blown, this is me and me having an experience. And so in that place, a lot of people feel like, and even coming into neutrality, people will sort of feel like, this is boring. And it'll feel boring to the ego because, again, you're not having the highs and lows. You're not having that nervous system dysregulation that we've been so accustomed to. So when that stops, it's kind of like, this feels weird. This feels really weird. Neutrality will feel really weird as you start to come in it. And inner union will feel much better. But neutrality feels odd in the beginning because we're not used to that. But that being said, even though the ego will translate neutrality in the beginning as like feeling nothing, disassociation, boredom, who would want to feel like this? I don't feel anything for the twin now. What's going on? I just feel like I can take it or leave it. I don't really care, right? All of that sort of stuff, it does shift. And you start to move out of feeling like, because that's the ego programming telling you those things, because you haven't been in soul alignment and in soul resonance for so long that we forget what it feels like to be in peace, right? We forget that peace is actually neutral, that peace is not actually good or bad, right? So in regard to, yeah, no, it's not boring, right? Being with the twin in physical union when you're in inner union is not boring. It's not a flatlined state. It's a very peaceful state. Yes, you are still attracted to them, but the attraction to them is not coming from fear-based energy. I did another video on this a few days ago about emotion, energy, and the twin, and then did another one about feeling emotion towards the twin. So you guys can check those out if you'd like. It's the emotion and the attraction and the sexuality and the intimacy that you used to experience, not only with the twin, assuming that you experienced that with the twin, because I know not everyone has, but also that you have experienced with soulmates and karmics and non-soul family members. All of that still was coming from separation. So it's still coming from that duality state. It's still coming from that fear-based energy. So when you collapse that, when you neutralize that, you're not going to be experiencing attraction, love, intimacy, sex, all of those things from that same angle. Now you're going to be experiencing that through soul, right? Through the higher self, through the true vibration of love, which I have talked about in a lot of my videos as well, through the true frequency of love. So you feel the attraction to them because they are you. So this is a very heightened state, right? I said at some point I'm going to do a video on sacred sexuality. I'll try to do that. But so this is a heightened state because now you've come into Hieros Gamos. So now you have the third energy involved, right? This is next level. This is completely next level, and that's all I'm going to say about it in this video. So no, this is not like I've come into neutrality and so now I'm not attracted to them and I don't, want to be with them like sexually or intimately or anything like that. No, it's not like that at all. It's actually very heightened, and it's actually coming from, it's hard to explain that, but it is the third energy. It's very, very all-encompassing, and it's kind of like a dissolving of you into you. It's like a full-blown merging in that way, intimately. So those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'll try to do another video on that in the future, like I said. So no, you do not lose attraction for them. You don't suddenly become celibate with them. All of those sort of things that people have asked me. That's not how this works. It's just that all of those like emotions and things, and passion and all of that stuff that has been driving you up until you've come into inner union, that was still coming from separation and fear-based energy. And, when we're sort of in that place of the fear of losing a romantic partner, which most of us have experienced, as soon as I really, like someone or catch feelings for someone, and then suddenly I feel afraid and I have to back up because that means I have something to lose. All of that is fear, but it does stimulate, I don't know if that's the right word. It does produce that feeling of those oxytocin hits and those dopamine hits and all of that sort of stuff that does flood the blood system with having, all of these chemicals that are kind of like, the biological system going off the chart, chemical system going off the chart. And we associate that with love, right? We associate that with romantic partnership, and that's how it all plays out. It's, and I'm not going to sit here and say that suddenly you don't have any oxytocin or dopamine or whatever. It's not what I mean. But what I mean is that when you're in inner union and in physical union with the twin, you're just literally at a different frequency. You're literally at a different operating system. Your vibration has risen. And so the interaction that you have is just, it's next level, right? That's all. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's next level. So hopefully I answered all your questions. I don't know. Hopefully I answered them all. Let me just think real quick because I kind of jumped around a little bit. You guys know I don't ever write notes. Sometimes I feel like I should write notes just to keep me when I do videos like this that are answering several questions. Yeah, I think that's it. Being in physical union, it's just, it feels peaceful. Yeah, it feels good. It feels like you've come home. It feels like you've come home to you. It feels like there's just no fear. Like I said, there's no fear of them leaving or, there's none of that. There's no abandonment in anything. There's no rejection in anything. Just all of those programs that you will have been running for however long, You know, that's the process that you're going through right now during all of this awakening and ascension stuff, that is peeling off those layers, that's literally dissipating all of those energies. And you don't bring any of them with you into physical union with the twin when you're in inner union, and so they don't play out. And so just sort of imagine if you're in a, you know, romantic interaction with someone and you don't have any of that bullshit playing out anymore, and your mind doing all kinds of crap and telling all sorts of stories and having all of this fear and wondering where everybody is and if they're going to show up and if I said whatever, it's gone. All that's gone. And so that's why I say these videos are hard to make, because it's very experiential, because most of us haven't experienced that, right? But as you move forward and more people are coming into inner union and they are experiencing that, and so they can sort of vouch for, because I know a lot of you guys do in the comments, I really appreciate that this is real. This actually happens. This is a real thing that actually happens and is actually happening to a lot of twins as they are moving up the ascension ladder, so to speak. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that helps. You guys have an awesome day.